Is it worth buying a Lexus over a Toyota here in 2024 and even going forward? Has Lexus lost its magic that it had in the 90s and 2000s? The price hikes are real across all brands, across all models. Add into that the high interest rates going on. Is it worth spending that extra dough to get that high-end exclusive L badge on the front? Well, it used to be on the back of the car. Now it just says Lexus. But I've driven every single Toyota and Lexus model on the market available today, at least the ones here in North America. And I'll explain whether Lexus is worth it over the mainstream market Toyota branded models. I'll walk you through the brief Lexus backstory, compare current Toyotas to current Lexus models, and tell you if they're worth the price increase. Has Lexus lost its identity? And has Toyota made so much progress over the past few decades to make its luxury division irrelevant? The answers might surprise you. If you enjoy this content, you know what to do. Smash that like button. And if you want to see other video topics, let's say, is it worth buying Acura over Honda, or should you buy a Mazda over a Lexus? If you want to see that sort of content similar to this format, comment down below because I'm open to ideas. And if you're new here, subscribe. You don't want to miss upcoming content here on the channel. I have a Corolla Cross Hybrid that arrived today, and I will be reviewing that, and we'll talk a little bit about that vehicle today as well. So with that being said, let's get into it. As many of you know, when I started this channel, I was working for Lexus. I was a sales consultant, and by the time I went full-time on YouTube, I had acquired the highest level of sales consultancy. I was a certified Lexus Master Sales Consultant. The requirements then were 2 years minimum on the job. You had to take a ton of online courses. You also had to take quite a few in-person courses at a regional training center. So I was going from Lexus of Omaha all the way to the Chicago area to take these courses in person to get that next level education and certification. And in Naperville, Illinois, where I took those classes, I took on the responsibility of learning the Lexus Covenant. Now, I don't remember it anymore, so I'm just going to read it for you. Lexus competes in the luxury automotive industry, the world's most prestigious race in the world. Lexus's history and experience gained over more than 2 decades. At this point, it's 3.5 decades. And this covenant is still recited to my knowledge before these Lexus employees start assembling cars at plants around the world. It's like their warm-up prayer for the day. So for more than 3.5 decades, this has culminated in the creation of their automobiles, the finest ever built. Lexus will win the race because Lexus will do it right from the start. Lexus will have the finest dealer network in the industry. Lexus will treat each customer as we would a guest in our home. That is that omotenashi, that anticipating the needs of your guest. Lexus still believes in that very much. If you think you can't, you won't. If you think you can, you will. We can, we will. Is Lexus still tied to this covenant that they built their success onto? Or have they strayed away from some of these things? Like Lexus will have the finest dealer network in the industry. Have they strayed away from their customer service? And are their vehicles the finest ever built? Well, let's go back in time. And the whole reason Lexus was created in the first place was for Toyota buyers and loyal Toyota buyers to upgrade. My dog is looking at me. Hold on. Had to let him in. He's a husky and it's South Florida in the middle of summer. So he cannot handle the outside very long. Anyways, yeah, let's say in the mid 80s, you had a Camry or a Corolla and you wanted to upgrade. Well, you had to leave Toyota completely. You had to go to Cadillac, Lincoln, or BMW, Audi, Mercedes. You had to go somewhere else outside of the Toyota branding to get a luxury vehicle. And Toyota said, hey, we want to keep these customers in brand. How do we do that? Let's create our own luxury lineup. It can't be called Toyota. They should have called it the Crown, almost looking back. Now, Lexus is extremely successful with that naming. They chose a good name. What if they called it the Crown lineup? And we'll circle back to what's currently happening with Toyota's Crown models and how that's competing with their Lexus models in modern times. But back in the day, Lexus came out of nowhere and smacked traditional luxury automakers in the face with the original LS 400 in 1989. That vehicle had Toyota's first ever V8, and that V8 was unbelievably refined, reliable, powerful, smooth, all that good stuff, and left the competition at the time in the dust. And it cost way less money than its competition did at the time. And so you had a better car that's better built for less money. And they succeeded on that formula for a very, very long time until they became the greatest selling nameplate here in the United States for luxury autos. And I don't remember what year that was. It might have been around 2010. 2015 is when they hit their peak sales of all time. And they're always competing in the top three. BMW has had the hold of the luxury market the last handful of years. Mercedes-Benz has been number 2 or 3, but Lexus has been 2 or 3 since their last cap. That might have been in 2015 of being the king of the luxury sales market. Lexus is now sold in over 90 countries, even though originally being designed to take over the United States market, the North American market. And they did that. They succeeded. But since they succeeded and has risen to the top, they haven't been, I would say, at the top of their game. But what set Lexus apart in the beginning might not be setting them apart today. Here are some of the things that set Lexus apart for so many years. Extremely tight tolerances, meaning the vehicles fit together super, super tight. There's nothing loose or floppy going around. The panel gaps are perfect all the way around the vehicle, regardless of what type of vehicle it is. The vehicles are expertly assembled like they would be assembled by, I don't know, aliens or something like that. The Lexus models, especially for the first couple decades, were some of the best built cars ever to grace the automotive world. We saw laser screw welding, more structural adhesive, which makes the vehicles feel tighter. They last longer. They age really well. You have more sound deadening materials compared to Toyotas, for example. You had the highest quality semi-aniline leather. You had Takumi Master Craftsman, which we'll talk about more here in a little bit, building these Lexus models. You had superior suspensions, acoustic glass that makes the sound not infiltrate the cabin from the exterior. You had high fidelity sound systems, Nakamichi in the beginning, and they switched over to Mark Levinson, which is still a pretty good sound system. You had varieties of real wood, even bamboo, but you had oak, maple, all sorts of different types of woods with different finishes. Absolutely beautiful wood interiors. And depending on the model, you had exclusive powertrains and exclusive platforms not found on Toyota models. I have to stop right there because a lot of those Toyota models that did had some of those Lexus powertrains and platforms were only available in the Japanese market. In fact, Lexus was not available in the Japanese market until I believe 2005. So they would have essentially Lexus models in Japan as Toyota models. All right, they would just be called something different. Altezza, Aristo, I could keep going. In the glory days, they had beautiful upscale design, exuding class and luxury, and sometimes performance with the early models, the first and second generation IS and GS, and even the SC models early on, which were really fancy versions essentially of the Supra, the Mark IV Supra, which is known as one of the most legendary Japanese cars of all time. But things have changed since the height or in the glory days of Lexus. And I'm not talking about sales. Their sales still remain strong, even though they're not at the very tip top of the market here in the United States. And their sales are actually still growing overall globally, even though they've come down here a little bit in the United States. But in the 3.5 decades that Lexus has been strutting its stuff, Toyota hasn't been staying in the back seat. No, they've been closing this gap between them and Lexus this whole time. The mainstream Toyota brand over the years has really improved their feature set, their luxury, their safety, their powertrains, while keeping a lower price tag than the luxury counterparts. Why? Why is this happening? Because of competition from the Korean brands that came out of nowhere, but also competition from other Japanese automakers. They had to improve their stuff. Volkswagen, they had to improve over them, and they surpassed them as the world's largest automaker a few years back. And it keeps going, right? You have to keep making your base models so good in order to keep up with the competition. And now the big threat, and I'm not going to get into this too much, but the big threat is the Chinese automakers. And what is Toyota going to do to make themselves relevant in the future? Well, they got to make sure their base models are really impressive as well. And that's just going to keep closing the gap with the luxury Lexus, in my opinion, as well. Now, this was particularly tough for me when I was selling for Lexus, when I would see Toyota models come out on a new platform way before the Lexus would get that updating platform and updated powertrains. Key example here, I think it was end of 2018, the new RAV4 came out, and the RAV4 at the time was a slam dunk in terms of new features, new hybrid powertrain technology. Was on its 4th gen hybrid powertrain and a new platform. It was just a better vehicle overall. But you could say the Lexus counterpart to the RAV4, the more upscale version of the RAV4, is the NX. Now the NX is still smaller, I would say, than the RAV4, but they're definitely within the compact crossover segment, both of them. But the updated NX using the same powertrains, like the hybrid and the RAV4 Prime's powertrain, those didn't come until 3 years later on a Lexus. So that is a tough sell, in my opinion, for a new Lexus model. Say, hey, look at the new hybrid powertrains we have. It's like, wait a second. Those have been available on a cheaper Toyota for 3 years, and you're trying to sell this for 10, 15 grand more. Where's the value there? And so when I was selling for Lexus, I would lose some sales to the new RAV4 hybrid at the time because the NX hybrid just couldn't compete in comparison. I would lose some sales to the Mazda CX-5 at the time too, which is not considered luxury, but I would take a CX-5 turbo over the new NX turbo. But we'll talk about more of that sort of thing later on. And with electrification and emissions regulations controlling where everything is heading with powertrains, that's not helping Lexus. And in fact, Toyota and Lexus will be more similar than ever with their powertrains. And that's one of the ways Lexus has pulled away in the past. Exclusive V8s, unique powertrains that weren't seen on Toyotas. And now with electrification, it seems like everything's getting the same vanilla treatment. It's just that Lexus seemingly gets that vanilla treatment years after it happens on a Toyota. Lexus in the 90s and 2000s, and even today on certain models, but especially in their glory days, Lexus was known for having some of the best interiors in the entire luxury market. Interiors that could compete with cars that cost maybe twice as much. We had real wood. I already mentioned that. We had the finest leather in the world. You had the finest stitching in the world. Pretty much on every single model and every single trim in the glory days. Now we have heaps of synthetic leather, which is called Nulux, and it's gotten pretty good. It can fool me more times than not, but that's not the point. You can say you have a fake Louis bag that might actually hold up better long term than a real Louis bag, but if it's not the real thing in the luxury market, a lot of people don't want it. They want the real thing. Right? That's the same thing with fake diamonds versus real diamonds. You can make a fake diamond in a laboratory that is technically perfect, but it's nowhere near this same desirability and actual worth compared to a real diamond that was forged by the earth itself. And I wish Lexus would even attempt to make fake wood in their cars to make their interiors more lively, more luxurious feeling, because hey, leather is one thing, but you can fool me on wood if it's done right. It doesn't, I'm not touching it all the time like I am with leather. Your hands, your butt, your legs, your back, your neck, your head is always on that leather on a car, especially in the leather wrapped steering wheel. If they get away from leather wrapped steering wheels, okay, here's the exception. The RZ has a faux leather wrapped steering wheel, and that thing's really, really nice. We'll talk about the RZ later. It is good to be eco-friendly and now no longer use some of those animal products or those wood products. I get it. But people in the luxury segment, they don't necessarily care about saving the world. They want to feel important. They want to feel that quality, that upper level class, and they can't always get that from eco products. Now, Toyota's interiors have definitely gotten better. I wouldn't say they're Lexus quality yet, but it feels like Lexus has taken a step down from luxury or even ultra luxury interiors down to just premium quality interiors. So much so that oftentimes I find an interior in a Mazda car that costs a lot less than a Lexus, I find it to be superior. Okay, so they've taken a step back, especially with interior quality. And no, Toyota has not caught up, but still, they're closing the gap. And so with powertrain platform and technology sharing more common than ever before, surely Lexus can pull itself away in terms of one of the things that they pulled away from everybody back in the day, and that was unmatched build quality. And I think they've actually lost some ground here as well. And maybe I'll bring on my friend David Chow and we can have a long discussion about this. Because he measures panel gaps and panel fitment on every single car review he does. And that's really important to him from an engineer background. So if you guys would like to see us collaborate on that sort of thing about if Lexus is the same quality as it used to be, let me know down below. But let's get back into when Lexus began. Every single model was made in Japan, and they were built by the most experienced and elite Toyota craftsmen known as Takumi, which just means master craftsman in Japanese. Now, these master craftsmen have amassed at least 60,000 hours of work in a specific area building cars, and they could be in just like stitching, for example. But oftentimes these Lexus employees will get rotated so they don't develop injuries, one, or overusage injuries, but also to keep their jobs more spicy, a little bit more fun, so they don't, do 30 years of just stitching steering wheels. They also do panel gap stuff or installing certain things. They change their jobs, but regardless, they've amassed 60,000 hours of perfection and making the most perfect cars as possible. And 60,000 work hours is about 30 years of working if you're working like 40 hours a week. Now, we know in Japan, a lot of them are not working 40 hours a week. They're working more than that, all right? They're also required to fold origami cats with their opposite hand, one hand only, in less than 90 seconds. And they're supposed to do this every day before they start work. I don't know if that is still a thing that they do over there, but it was at some point in time, which is just insane. And this sort of dedication to work and mastery, as well as just overall work ethic, this is built into Japanese culture, and you can say ingrained into children, and it's built into every single work environment essentially in Japan. Is that able to translate to other markets nowadays where they build Lexus models outside of Japan? There's even ES models actually built in India, because India has a really, really high import tax. But at least here in North America, in Canada, they build the NX and RX. They built the RX there for a very long time, for decades at this point. In Indiana, they just brought on a new Lexus, that is the TX, and they've been building the ES in Kentucky since, I want to say 2016. I want to say since 2016, but that is actually going back to Japan starting in 2025 when we get, in theory, the redesigned Lexus ES for 2026 model year. So are we able to see this Takumi craftsmanship on the assembled Lexuses here in North America? And the answer is, I don't think so. They're not just pulling these scrub workers that just started working at Toyota. No, these workers have to be the best of the best. And they have really high requirements, not only just in terms of work duration at the Toyota plants that they work at, they also have to pass all these tests and be trained by Takumi trainers. So these Takumi trainers, of course, come from Japan. They are some of the best workers for Toyota, and I think they have to have an insane amount of work hours under the belt before they leave the Japanese production site to come to America to train our workers. Between the work hours under their belt, the tests they need to pass, the things they need to memorize, all depends on what kind of job they can do working on a Lexus. The more skilled they are, the more difficult of a job they're going to have. And they still rotate as well. So these are the best of the best Toyota workers here in North America that work hard. They work their butts off as hard as they can to be Lexus assemblers. Do I think they're as good as the Takumi in Japan? I think there could be a few that are, but overall, I would say the workforce in Japan is more dedicated, more consistent, and more skilled than even the best workers here, on average anyways, in North America. And so can these Lexus models made outside of Japan match the quality of those made in Japan? That's the question. And if they're 99% as good, how does that affect the vehicles as they age? How will the reliability be long-term in comparison? What are the creaks and rattles like over time compared to a perfectly made sample from the lines on Japan? I think it's impossible to say, but it's definitely worth mentioning. And it gets a lot of you guys fired up about, hey, can vehicles made outside of Japan match the quality of their sister vehicles that are made in Japan? That is always up for a discussion, and that's just a small part of this video, all right? Because we still get some Toyotas that are actually made in Japan, so it's not all just about Lexus models being made in Japan. Another area that I think Lexus has lost ground on in the last decade, a little over a decade at this point, is in design. And this is mostly a personal opinion, but feel free to share your thoughts down below on this hot topic, the Spindle Grille. It was introduced on the then new Lexus GS, rest in peace Lexus GS. That's another model that helped differentiate the brand from Toyota, and without it being in the lineup anymore, the brand has lost a little bit of its soul. But in 2012, the Spindle Grille debuted on the Lexus GS, and that pushed Lexus in a whole new direction. So it looked into the past. Why is it called the Spindle Grille? Well, Toyota started actually as a textile company. They had big looms to make fabric, and they used spindles on those looms. All right. All I think about is Sleeping Beauty, right? Poking her finger on the spindle. I don't know. That's what I think of anyways as a kid raised here in America. But Lexus wanted to incorporate that sort of identity into the grille to make it stand out as a luxury brand, to make it more sporty, but also kind of have a signature that makes it Lexus. If we look at BMW, they have the kidney grille. Mercedes has their, almost their peace sign logo that makes them unique. The Spindle Grille is hit or miss, and I would say overall it's been a miss for the brand. On their coupes and sedans, it's usually pretty decent looking. on most of their crossovers, it's typically not good, to say the least. I'm sure a lot of you guys have other opinions or more strong opinions, but I want to leave that out. I just want to say, like, Toyota models, their design isn't that great, but I feel like Lexus design has taken a step back. So that gap again between Lexus and Toyota is shrinking. Now, I have high hopes for Lexus. They're getting rid of the spindle grille and incorporating it more into the body. It wasn't done well in the Lexus RX. In fact, I think the new RX looks worse than the 4th generation RX that it replaces. When the 5th gen came out, they incorporated the grille into the body to mark the transformation into a more electrified brand where you don't need a grille on the car anymore because batteries don't require as much airflow as gasoline engines. All right. So they started incorporating the grille into the body. I don't like how it looks for the most part on the new RX. And it does look good on the LBX, the tiny Yaris Cross luxury vehicle that we don't get in the United States. But I think it does look good on that vehicle, that spindle body. If they incorporate that spindle body grille like we see in the concepts that was debuted in 2021, we're in for a good treat. But if they make it like the LZFC and the LZFL, I just don't know how that's going to fly. They made it even more polarizing than it needed to be. And before we get into if an RX is better than the new Crown Signia or if the ES is better than the new Camry, stuff like that, what about Lexus customer experience? All right, the omotenashi, the anticipation of your guests' needs, treating someone like they're a guest in your own home. Lexus still has the edge way above Toyota. So if you want a better buying experience, Lexus should be better. Now, it's not unanimous. There are going to be some really crappy Lexus dealers out there, and there's going to be some Toyota dealers that have upfront pricing and provide a better experience up front. That's just the way it is. But overall, the buying process should be far more professional, more transparent on the Lexus end. The service end is always going to be better on the Lexus end. The thing is, Lexus dealers want you to service your Toyota there, and it doesn't cost any more. So that's what I've been recommending forever. If you have a Toyota, don't take your Toyota to the Toyota dealership to get it serviced. It's an effing circus. I've done it a couple times, and I don't ever want to do it again. Just take your Toyota to a Lexus dealer. They know how to work on Toyotas, and you'll have a much better customer service experience with the Lexus dealer, and they will cherish your business compared to the Toyota dealership on average. There could be some Toyota dealerships if you live in a small town or something that really, really stand apart. But in my personal experience, it's always worth servicing your Toyota at a Lexus dealership. It's going to cost pretty much the same anyways with a better experience. All right, with that out of the way, we need to get on over to the spreadsheet. So let's start with the sedans. Is the Lexus IS still worth it? The Lexus IS is really old at this point. It still has amazing designs. It's going to get another refresh. Is it worth it over a Corolla? And the answer is they're so different, even though they're both compact sedans, they're just so different. So they're both worth it. So I'm going to put a 1 in both categories here. All right. IS is all built in Japan, rear-wheel drive sports sedan. Corolla is a budget car. So there's no comparison here. This is a topic I love talking about because after driving the new Camry and even the new Crown, I cannot recommend the Lexus ES. The only way I recommend a Lexus ES over these models is if you get the V6. If you want a V6 for whatever reason, I totally get it. All right. So that's when the Lexus ES is worth it. But if you don't care for a V6 and you just want the smoothest and most efficient powertrain as possible, the Camry and Crowns are so much better. Now, the Camry has a 5th gen hybrid system. The Crown has a 4th gen. But the Crown also has the Hybrid Max powertrain, which has equal, if not better performance than the V6, which is front-wheel drive only. I understand if you don't like the styling on the Crown or the Camry, you'd get the Lexus ES. I get it. And the Lexus ES used to be kind of like the upscale Avalon. Rest in peace, Avalon. So Toyota killed the Avalon to kind of save the ES, but also make room for the Crown sedan. in the United States. But the Camry is so good on the newest the newest iteration of that K platform. It is crazy quiet, crazy smooth, even better to drive than ever before. And the 5th gen powertrain on it is fantastic. And you can get a hybrid all-wheel drive, and you cannot get a hybrid all-wheel drive on the ES. The ES is on the old architecture. So the Camry and the Crown are better buys than the Lexus ES. And I'll see you guys battle it out down below. But not only is it a better buy, they're just better cars overall. Again, I'll see you guys battle it out. The ES is built in Kentucky. The Camry's built in Kentucky. The Crown's built in Japan. But the new Camry, and I need to drive more samples of the Camry to further validate my opinions on it. But the test models that I drove for the media drive were unbelievable. They were so good. They were a Lexus with not quite as good materials, but in terms of build quality, smoothness, refinement, and ride quality, absolutely Lexus quality. Absolutely. All right, let's get into the coupes. Oh, let's not forget the LS. Well, is the LS worth it? And the answer is no. The LS is not worth it. It is old at this point. It never got good powertrains. It brought in the twin turbo V6 that is currently being scrutinized for being recalled on the Tundra, not in the LS, is recalled in the Tundra as well as the Land Cruiser, but it's a similar twin turbo V6. When the LS dropped the V8, it lost its soul. I'm sorry. I just haven't been able to recommend the LS. I just can't do it. I can't do it. All right. Go find yourself a 20-year-old Lexus LS 430 in good condition, and I would rather have that over the new LS. Call me crazy. All right. LS is not worth it, so it's not getting any recommendation here. And I'd probably take a Camry or Crown over the LS, not because they're better cars overall, but they're just a better value, and the Lexus LS just makes me upset. The LS is going to get canceled more than likely, which is really depressing. I've already made videos on this. All right, let's get into the coupes. The coupes here is comparing apples to oranges because all of the RCs and LCs are made in Japan. All of them are worth it. Is the RC300 worth it over GR86? Yes, it costs a lot more, but here's the thing. You get a lightly used RC300 and it costs the same as a new GR86, and I would buy an RC300 over GR86. What about the RC350? Well, new, it's expensive, $50,000, $55,000, but get a used one, I would absolutely pick it over a Supra 2.0. What about the RCF? New? Well, a track edition will cost you $100K, and the non-track edition I think is like 80, 90K. They're not worth it new, but used, I'd absolutely buy it over a Supra 3.0. New, I'd buy a Supra 3.0. So I would recommend both of these. And the RCF as a used car, Supra as a new car. And I know that opens up whole other spectrum of like, Kirk, comparing new to used is just not comparable, but you gotta have some leeway here. So a used RC over any Toyota coupe is worth its money, in my opinion. The only new coupe that's worth the money from Toyota compared to a used Lexus is a Supra, manual transmission or automatic transmission 3.0 inline 6 from the B58. None of these Toyota coupes are even made by Toyota. This is made in a Subaru plant, and these are made in Austria alongside of the BMW Z4 by Magna Steyr, if I remember correctly. The GR86, I mean, I'd definitely take a Miata over it, and the Supra 2.0, I would probably get a used 3.0 over that. So it's hard for me to recommend the 2.0 as well, especially since it doesn't come in a manual. All right, let's get into the crossovers. This is where it's going to get pretty spicy here, and I broke it down even further. Yaris Cross versus LBX. We don't have either in the United States, so I can't recommend either. All right, Corolla Cross and Prius Prime, I'm putting them in the same category as well as a normal Prius over the UX. Yes, Corolla Cross, Prius Prime, and Prius are all an easy recommendation over the UX. The UX is a bad buy. It doesn't help that it was neglected for a long time, where the Prius Prime, and the Corolla Cross all had 5th gen hybrid technology for a couple of years at least, and then the UX finally just got it this year. I just reviewed it. It's good, but it's way too expensive compared to what you get on the lesser models here. And it's so expensive in the UX that you could just spend a little bit more and get an NX hybrid, which is a way better car than the UX hybrid. All right, so UX, you can die and be discontinued. It's not a bad car, it's just bad priced. RAV4, 2.5 liter naturally aspirated versus NX 2.4. I don't like the NX 2.4, so I'm going to recommend the RAV4 over it. Yes, if you want performance in an NX, you can get it, but the hybrid NX performs almost as well as the turbo model, at least in acceleration, but it gives you a lot better fuel economy, about 40 miles per gallon, where the NX turbo is like 25. And the NX hybrid's smoother. It's going to be more reliable, less maintenance on it as well. The all-wheel drive torque vectoring is not going to be as good. The performance from an enthusiast aspect is not going to be as good because it doesn't have an 8-speed automatic. But NX hybrid, I can absolutely recommend. RAV4 hybrid, absolutely recommend. So NX hybrid is still worth it over a RAV4 hybrid because it's so much quieter, so much smoother. It is better built than a RAV4 hybrid, no doubt. RAV4 Prime, all of them are built in Japan. It is, if you can find one, a great buy. NX hybrid, NX plug-in hybrid that has the same powertrain, absolutely a great buy as well. It's just really expensive. $65K, something like that. It's about $10K more than a RAV4 Prime. Typically, I would say it's not worth it, but since NX plug-in hybrids are so much easier to find, it's worth the money. And it is objectively a better car than the RAV4 Prime. It just costs more. But yes, NX plug-in hybrid, it is worth that money. So let's get into the Crown Signia. Can I recommend the Crown Signia? The answer is yes. However, it is not as good as a Lexus. It is a good vehicle in terms of design. It looks way better than the RX, which it goes up against. I can recommend the RX 350h. The RX 350h is quieter than the Crown Signia. It's smoother. There's less vibrations, less noise coming in. But the Crown Signia just looks so much better that I'm willing to trade in a little bit of that refinement for a better looking vehicle. So that lifted wagon of the Signia is absolutely worth it in my opinion, but so is the RX hybrid. RX gas is not worth it. I'm going to put a 0 here, a 0. I'll put a 0 on the models that I don't recommend over the Toyota models. How about that? Do I recommend the RX plug-in hybrid? No, I would get an NX plug-in hybrid. It's not a bad car. It's just really expensive. It's like $70,000+ Get an NX plug-in hybrid or a RAV4 Prime over the RX plug-in hybrid, unless you can get a really good deal on that RX plug-in hybrid. RX 500h FSP, do not recommend. I'd rather have a 350h, even though it's a little bit slower. I get a lot better fuel economy. And it's still not that fun to drive. All right, we get into the Grand Highlander and TX, which are both built in Indiana on the same assembly lines. What do I recommend here? So we're looking at the 2.4 turbo. Oh man. Yeah, I kind of recommend it on the Grand Highlander. I don't on the TX. This powertrain is not refined enough to be in a Lexus model by itself. When you make it electrified on the 500h, it's almost worth considering. I'm not going to put a 0 there because it's almost worth considering. It's the same powertrain you also have on the Crown sedan in the Platinum model. But it is a good powertrain. But the problem is I can't recommend it when Toyotas have it for way less money. The thing is, the Grand Highlander not only has the Hybrid Max, the 500h powertrain, 366 horsepower, they also have a 2.5 liter hybrid with 240 horsepower that gets you 35 miles per gallon. Okay, so the Grand Highlander not only looks nearly identical, it looks better than the TX on the front end, in my opinion. And the TX interior is just not that much nicer on the Grand Highlander to command the upgrade. Yes, is it quieter? Is it quieter? Yes. Is it smoother? Maybe slightly, but it's not worth it. It's not worth it over the excellent Grand Highlander. Land Cruiser. I can recommend the Land Cruiser and the GX. They're both built in Japan. GX is Tahara. Land Cruiser, it's been at a few different... It's actually been at a Hino plant at the Hamura plant, if I'm saying that right. Yes, they're both built in Japan. Sometimes at the Toyota auto body plant, they're both worth it. It's just personal preference. So I'm not going to go too much in that. Sequoia or LX? Well, with the GX being around, that's now the same size as the LX, essentially, I can't recommend the LX, and you get more features on the GX. And the GX will have a hybrid soon. Sequoia standard hybrid. I'll recommend the Sequoia standard hybrid over the non-hybridized Lexus LX, which is currently recalled with its twin-turbo V6, and the Sequoia is not with its hybrid twin-turbo V6, and the Sequoia is bigger and less money than the LX. All right, BZ4X, this is like kind of a joke category here. I don't recommend either unless you get an insane lease deal on either of these. Maybe $350 a month on an RZ is what I'd pay for a lease, and around $300 per month on a BZ4X. That's before taxes, title, registration, that sort of thing. So I would probably say these are good lease deals. $300 to $350, but if you're purchasing it, terrible buy. Oh, before I get into the tally, how could I forget the LC500, which is made at the Motomachi plant, built by Takumi, that also worked on the LFA. The LC500 is worth its weight in gold. It's worth its price, new and used, at any price tag, in my opinion. So they're brand new convertibles around $110,000. You get them used for around $70,000. They're worth it at every price point. It's the only vehicle on this list that I would say exudes the ethos and identity of Lexus. Expert build quality, expert design, expert class, expert levels of refinement, expert levels of making you feel something, and expert levels of interior quality and build quality and materials. There's no shortcuts here with the LC500 that I'm aware of. It is a perfect car. Like the Miata is a perfect car. My two favorite coupes is the MX-5 Miata from Mazda on kind of the entry level end. And then at the high end is the LC500 from Lexus. This vehicle is worth every penny that you will pay for it. All right. So with that being said, final tally here. Yeah, overall, most Toyota models are absolutely worth it to buy over an equivalent Lexus model. There are quite a few Lexus models that hold their own. The GX, even though it's no longer, I would say, luxury, it's kind of more of like a differently styled Toyota at this point, but I think it's priced well. All right. RX hybrid's great. NX plug-in hybrid's great. NX hybrid's great. All the coupes, even though they're aged, they're really good used buys, besides the LC, which is a great new buy. And the IS, also getting old, is still a good buy for what it is, with its a beautiful design and really good build quality, and they're super reliable. But their crossovers are getting harder for me to recommend. They don't have a bespoke platform. They're not rear-wheel drive bias, let's say like Genesis or like Mazda's new large platform crossovers. They don't have powertrains besides the TX, and I forgot this, the TX plug-in hybrid, which also is going to add to the tally. TX plug-in hybrid, I will be driving it soon. That's a powertrain that's only found in a $200,000 Century SUV in Japan. And so you can get it for around $80,000 here in the States. I would recommend this vehicle if it's in your budget, the TX plug-in hybrid. But yes, the rest of the TXs I can't recommend, honestly, because the Grand Highlander is that good. But the TX plug-in hybrid I can. I think I've covered everything on this list. And I think you guys know at this point, Lexus is not what it used to be. It is too close to Toyota at this point. Lexus has taken a couple steps back in so many ways. Toyota has taken so many steps forward in a lot of ways. And some people, it's worth it to them just to say, hey, I can afford a Lexus and I'm going to go buy the car that has a more exclusive and more expensive badge to it. And I totally get that. But I would say if you're buying a new Toyota, especially the ones I tallied up here, if you're buying one of these models, it's going to not let you down. You're going to be a happy owner of it, and you don't have to worry that you're missing out too much from not having a Lexus model. And one last thing, Toyota, what the heck are you doing with introducing these Crown models into the United States. They're too close to Lexus. They're priced too close to Lexus too. It just makes it really confusing for our buyers. It would be better off if Toyota didn't introduce these models for our market, just kept them for Japan. All right. The Crown lineage has been severed. We didn't need it back. Would have been nice? Yes, but it just muddies the water here. And it's great to have choice. I'm not complaining as a consumer and as a fan. I freaking love that we've Crowns back in the United States. But from the lens of a Lexus dealership or the lens of just the Lexus brand, those models are a thorn in your side. No, they're not volume models, not even close, right? The NX and RX will sell a much higher volume than the Signia, and the Crown will sell at much lower volumes than the Lexus ES. But that is competition that is taking away from your crown jewels, right? No pun intended. Well, pun definitely intended, I guess. And if the Crown Sport comes to the United States, goodbye, NX. So many people would rather have the Crown Sport in a hybrid or plug-in hybrid compared to the NX. And isn't it ironic that we do not get the Crown Signia plug-in hybrid that is available in Japan, because that would step too much on the toes and price too of the NX and RX plug-in hybrids. The RX plug-in hybrid I already can't recommend because of the NX plug-in hybrid and the RAV4 Prime, but the Crown Signia got that Prime powertrain. I don't know if I could recommend the NX plug-in hybrid. So Toyota knows what they're doing to an extent by segmenting their models here, right? If the Crown Signia got that Hybrid Max powertrain, you can't get it on an NX, and it's too expensive on an RX. 70, I think it was like, gosh, what was it? Was it $70,000, $60,000, $70,000 in the models I tested? It's just too much money. All right. So we get watered down version of this Crown Signia, not of this Crown, because I know sedans don't sell that one anyway. So they're giving it everything it's got to make sedans sell well, but they didn't give us the real sedan. And that's a topic for another day. But let me know down below, do you think Toyota is so close to Lexus now that Lexus is getting harder to recommend? It is for me, especially with their crossovers, because their crossovers share the same technology, powertrains, and platforms as the mainstream Toyota models. And even the Crown model at this point in time with the Sport and the Signia have better design than the Lexus NX, RX, UX, etc. I'll shut down there. I rest my case. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.